What would you do if you discovered your billionaire husband was planning to murder you? Sophia Reynolds thought she had the perfect life, a mansion in Malibu, millions of followers, and a baby on the way. But when she caught her husband proposing to his mistress at a Beverly Hills hotel, everything changed in an instant. One slap from his girlfriend, one viral video, and suddenly, Sophia realized she wasn't just dealing with a cheating husband. She might be married to a killer who had done this before. This is the true story of how a pregnant influencer used social media, her tech mogul sister, and a dangerous game of cat and mouse to expose a murderer and save her own life. But the question is, when you're trapped in a web of lies, betrayal, and deadly secrets, how do you fight back without becoming the next victim? Stay with me, because this story will shock you, inspire you, and prove that sometimes the most ordinary people are capable of extraordinary courage. If this story of survival and justice moved you, hit that like button to support more incredible true stories like this one. Share this with someone who needs to hear about the power of speaking your truth. You never know whose life you might help save. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell, because we're bringing you more jaw-dropping stories of ordinary people who refuse to be victims. Your engagement helps these important stories reach the people who need them most. What did you think of Sophia's incredible journey? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, your voice has power, your story matters, and you're stronger than you know. Sophia Reynolds adjusted her ring light one final time, the massive diamond on her finger catching the California sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Malibu mansion. At 28, she had built an empire of 500,000 Instagram followers who hung on her every perfectly curated word. Today's announcement would change everything. "Good morning, beautiful soul," she said to her phone camera, one hand resting on her still flat stomach. "I have the most incredible news to share with you all." The Pacific Ocean sparkled behind her like a blue-green jewel, and the $8 million house provided the perfect backdrop for what should have been the happiest moment of her life. Derek had insisted on the mansion when they married 2 years ago, claiming his real estate empire demanded they live in luxury that matched his success. "Derek and I are expecting our first baby," Sophia announced, her voice trembling with genuine emotion. The comments section immediately exploded with heart emojis and congratulations. But she noticed something that made her stomach clench. Where was Derek, as if summoned by her thoughts? Her husband's voice echoed from his home office down the hall, speaking in hushed tones. Sophia wrapped up the live stream quickly, promising a Q&A session later that evening. But the seed of doubt had already been planted. Derek Reynolds, 35 and devastatingly handsome in that sharp-suited Forbes magazine way, had built his fortune buying distressed properties and flipping them into luxury developments. His success was undeniable. But lately, something felt wrong. The late-night phone calls, the new cologne, the way he always kept his phone face down during dinner. "Babe, did you see the announcement?" Sophia called out, walking toward his office. The call ended abruptly as she approached, and Derek emerged with that practiced smile that had once made her heart race. "Of course, sweetheart. Congratulations to us," he said, kissing her forehead with lips that felt cold. "I was just handling some urgent business. You know how it is." But Sophia was beginning to realize she didn't know how it was at all. Her best friend Jessica Torres, who also managed her social media accounts, had been dropping hints for weeks. Comments from a user named Amber Sinclair appearing on Derek's old photos. Venmo charges to restaurants Sophia had never visited. Location tags that didn't match his supposed business meetings. "The announcement already has 50,000 views," Sophia said, studying his face. "Everyone's so excited for us." "That's wonderful, honey. Really wonderful." Derek's phone buzzed, and his eyes immediately darted to the screen. "Listen, I have to run to another meeting. Big investor flying in from New York. You understand, right?" Sophia nodded, but understanding and accepting were two different things. As Derek grabbed his keys and headed for his Tesla, she noticed he'd changed his cologne again. This was the third new scent in 2 months. After he left, Sophia found herself scrolling through the comments on her announcement video. Buried among the congratulations was a message that made her blood run cold. Amber Sinclair had written, "Hope he's more faithful to you than he was to me. Congratulations on the baby. Honey." The message was deleted within minutes, but Sophia had screenshot it. Her hands shook as she called Jessica. "Jess, I need you to look into someone for me," she said without preamble. "Amber Sinclair, and I need you to be discreet about it." "Sophia, what's going on?" "I think Derek might be having an affair." The words felt like poison in her mouth. "And I think his mistress just threatened me on Instagram." As the California sun began to set over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Sophia Reynolds sat in her perfect house with her perfect life and realized that sometimes the most beautiful facades hide the ugliest truths. Jessica Torres had been Sophia's best friend since college, and in the 3 years she'd been managing Sophia's social media presence, she'd developed an eye for digital detective work. What she found about Amber Sinclair made her sick to her stomach. She's 26, blonde, and has an OnlyFans account with over 100,000 subscribers. Jessica reported over coffee the next morning in Sophia's kitchen. "But here's the thing that really bothers me. She's been tagging herself at the same restaurants as Derek for the past 2 months." Sophia's pregnancy nausea hit harder as Jessica showed her the evidence. Photos of Amber at Nobu Malibu on the same night Derek claimed to have dinner with investors. Check-ins at the Beverly Hills Hotel bar during Derek's supposed business trips. "There's more," Jessica continued, her voice gentle but firm. "I traced some of his recent Venmo activity. He's been sending money to someone with the initials AS. For things like spa treatments and shopping." The evidence was overwhelming, but Sophia needed to see it with her own eyes. She'd built her entire life around this marriage, around the dream of having a family with Derek. The thought of it all being a lie was almost unbearable. "I want to catch him," Sophia said finally. "Tonight. He said he has another investor dinner at the Beverly Hills Hotel. I want to see for myself." Jessica looked concerned. "Sophia, you're pregnant. The stress isn't good for the baby. The stress of not knowing is worse." That evening, Sophia chose her outfit carefully. A flowing dress that hid her early pregnancy, minimal makeup, and a baseball cap pulled low. She felt like a spy in her own life, and the irony wasn't lost on her that she was using the same discreet tactics she'd learned from years of avoiding paparazzi. The Beverly Hills Hotel bar was dimly lit and filled with the soft murmur of expensive conversations. Sophia chose a corner booth with a clear view of the main seating area and ordered sparkling water, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. She didn't have to wait long. Derek walked in at exactly 8:30, looking confident and relaxed in a way he hadn't at home in months. Behind him, strutting on impossibly high heels, was Amber Sinclair. In person, she was even more stunning than her photos suggested, with platinum blonde hair and the kind of curves that came from expensive personal trainers and possibly surgical enhancement. What happened next would be burned into Sophia's memory forever. Derek and Amber didn't sit at a business table. They didn't order dinner or spread out contracts. Instead, Derek pulled out Amber's chair with the same gallant gesture he'd used on their first date, and then he kissed her. Not a friendly peck, but a deep, passionate kiss that spoke of months of intimacy. Sophia's hands instinctively moved to her stomach, protecting the tiny life growing inside her. She wanted to leave, to preserve what remained of her dignity, but she couldn't move. It was like watching a car accident in slow motion. The worst part came when Derek pulled out a small velvet box. "Derek Reynolds, what are you doing?" Amber's voice carried across the bar, high and excited. "What I should have done months ago," Derek replied, loud enough for half the bar to hear. "Amber, will you marry me?" The words hit Sophia like a physical blow. He was proposing to his mistress while his pregnant wife sat 20 feet away. The cruelty was breathtaking. Amber's squeal of delight drew attention from other patrons, some of whom began filming with their phones. In the age of social media, every moment was potential content. That's when Sophia made her biggest mistake. She stood up. Maybe it was pregnancy hormones. Maybe it was righteous fury. Or maybe it was just the complete destruction of everything she'd believed about her life. Whatever it was, Sophia Reynolds walked straight to Derek's table. "Congratulations," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I hope she knows you're already married." Derek's face went white, then red, then a sickly shade of green. Amber, however, looked delighted by the drama. "Oh my God," Amber said, standing up and towering over Sophia in her heels. You must be the pathetic wife I've heard so much about. Amber, don't, Derek warned, but it was too late. Did you really think he loved you? Amber continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Honey, he's been complaining about you for months. The boring sex, the constant neediness, the way you've let yourself go. I'm pregnant, Sophia said quietly. And that's supposed to make you special? Amber laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Derek told me all about how you trapped him with that pregnancy, how you probably poked holes in the condoms. The accusation was so outrageous, so divorced from reality, that Sophia actually laughed. That laugh seemed to enrage Amber even more. You think this is funny? Amber raised her hand. The slap echoed through the bar like a gunshot. The slap sent Sophia stumbling backward, her hand flying to her stinging cheek. The entire bar had gone silent, and she could see at least a dozen phones pointed in her direction. In the age of social media, her humiliation was being broadcast in real time. Don't you ever disrespect me again, Amber hissed, her perfectly manicured nails clicking as she pointed at Sophia. Derek chose me. Deal with it. Derek finally found his voice, but not to defend his wife. Sophia, what are you doing here? You're making a scene. The betrayal was complete. Her husband of 2 years, the father of her unborn child, was more concerned about embarrassing his mistress than protecting his pregnant wife. Sophia looked around the bar, seeing the mixture of shock, pity, and barely concealed excitement on the faces watching her. Some were already typing furiously on their phones, uploading videos to TikTok and Instagram. By morning, her humiliation would be entertainment for millions. You're right, Sophia said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I am making a scene, but not the one you think. She pulled out her own phone and opened Instagram Live. Within seconds, her 500,000 followers were watching. Hi everyone, she said, her voice growing stronger. I'm broadcasting live from the Beverly Hills Hotel, where I just caught my husband proposing to his mistress. She turned the phone to show Derek and Amber, both frozen in horror. Say hi to Derek Reynolds, successful real estate mogul, and Amber Sinclair, OnlyFans model and apparently my husband's fiancée. Sophia, stop! Derek lunged for her phone, but she stepped back. The best part is, I'm 12 weeks pregnant with his child, but I guess that doesn't matter when you found someone with bigger tits and lower standards. Amber's face contorted with rage. You crazy bitch! The second slap was even harder than the first, and this time Sophia went down. As she hit the floor, she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen that made her cry out. The bar erupted into chaos. Several patrons rushed to help Sophia, while others continued filming. Someone called 911. Derek tried to explain to anyone who would listen that this was all a misunderstanding, while Amber grabbed her purse and headed for the exit. This isn't over, Amber said as she passed Sophia, who was now sitting on the floor with a cocktail napkin pressed to her bleeding lip. You have no idea who you're messing with. The ambulance arrived 15 minutes later, but by then the damage was done. Videos of the incident were already spreading across social media platforms. The hashtag pregnant wife slapped was trending on Twitter. TikTok videos with titles like Rich Man's Pregnant Wife Gets Slapped by Mistress were racking up millions of views. At Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, doctors confirmed that the baby was fine, but Sophia's blood pressure was dangerously elevated. They wanted to keep her overnight for observation. Derek arrived at the hospital 2 hours later, looking haggard and desperate. Baby, I can explain everything, he said, reaching for her hand. Sophia pulled away. Don't touch me. The Amber thing, it's complicated. Yes, we were seeing each other, but it's not what you think. You proposed to her. Derek, I watched you give her a ring. It was fake, a publicity stunt. She's trying to build her brand, and my being seen with her helps my image with younger investors. The lie was so absurd that Sophia almost laughed. Your image, Derek, you're married. To me, and I'm pregnant with your child. I know, and I love you. I love our baby. But you have to understand, appearance is everything in my business. Amber makes me look successful and desirable. And what do I make you look like? Derek hesitated just long enough for Sophia to see the truth in his eyes. Settled, domestic, old. The words hit harder than Amber's slap. This wasn't just an affair. This was a complete rejection of everything Sophia represented in Derek's life. "Get out," she said quietly. "Sophia, be reasonable. Get out." The shout brought a nurse running, and Derek was escorted from the room, alone in her hospital bed. Sophia checked her phone. The videos from the bar had exploded across social media. Her Instagram live broadcast had been viewed over 2 million times. The comments ranged from supportive to cruel, with many people questioning why she'd stayed with Derek if she suspected he was cheating, but it was the direct messages that really hurt. Hundreds of them, many from anonymous accounts, calling her pathetic, desperate, and stupid. Several contained explicit threats. A few were from other women sharing their own stories of betrayal, which somehow made it worse. Jessica arrived at midnight with coffee and a grim expression. "It's bad, Soph. Really bad." "How bad?" "Entertainment Tonight wants an interview. TMZ is offering 6 figures for exclusive details about your marriage. And Derek's lawyer already released a statement saying you have a history of mental health issues and that the pregnancy has made you unstable." Sophia closed her eyes. The man she'd loved, the man she'd built her life around, was now actively working to destroy her reputation. The father of her child was calling her crazy on national television. "There's something else," Jessica said gently. "Your sister called. Madison is flying in from San Francisco." Madison Cross was everything Sophia wasn't. Brilliant, ruthless, and successful beyond measure. She'd built a tech empire before her 30th birthday and been featured on the cover of Forbes twice. She was also fiercely protective of her younger sister. "How much did you tell her?" "Everything. She's not happy." That was the understatement of the century. When Madison Cross wasn't happy, people lost jobs, companies went bankrupt, and reputations were destroyed. Derek Reynolds had no idea what was coming for him. Madison Cross arrived at Cedars-Sinai at 6 a.m. in a black SUV that cost more than most people's houses. At 32, she commanded attention wherever she went, not just because of her success, but because of the aura of controlled power that surrounded her like an invisible force field. She swept into Sophia's hospital room, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit and carrying a tablet, 2 phones, and the expression of someone who was about to declare war. "How are you feeling?" Madison asked, her voice gentle as she kissed Sophia's forehead. "Like my entire life just exploded on the internet." "Good, that means you're ready to fight back." Madison pulled up a chair and opened her tablet. "I've spent the last 6 hours reviewing everything. The social media posts, Derek's financial records, his business associates, and Miss Amber Sinclair's entire digital footprint." "You got Derek's financial records. I have my ways." Madison's smile was sharp as a blade. "And what I found is very interesting. Derek's real estate empire isn't as solid as he claims. He's leveraged to the hilt, and several of his recent projects are hemorrhaging money. He needs investors desperately." "That doesn't explain Amber." "Actually, it does. Amber Sinclair isn't just some OnlyFans model. She's connected to a group of wealthy men who invest in high-risk, high-reward real estate projects. She's essentially a recruiter who uses her looks and social media presence to identify and cultivate potential investors." Sophia felt like she was learning about her husband's life for the first time. So their relationship is actually business. It started that way. But from what I can tell, it became personal very quickly. Derek is an idiot, but he's not stupid enough to propose to a business associate unless he'd completely lost his mind. Madison showed Sophia a series of screenshots from Amber's private social media accounts, photos of expensive gifts, vacation destinations, and intimate moments with Derek that painted a picture of a months-long affair. "The proposal last night wasn't fake. Derek is genuinely in love with this woman, and he's been planning to leave you for her." The words should have hurt, but Sophia felt oddly numb. Maybe she'd used up all her capacity for pain in the last 24 hours. "So what do? We destroy them both." Madison's plan was methodical and ruthless. First, they would leak information about Derek's financial troubles to the business press, destroying his reputation as a successful investor. Second, they would expose Amber's role as what amounted to a high-class escort for wealthy men. Third, they would use Sophia's pregnancy and the public sympathy from the slapping incident to launch a social media campaign that would make Derek and Amber the most hated couple in America. I've already started, Madison said, showing Sophia her phone. Hashtag Stand with Sophia is trending. I've got influencers, celebrities, and women's rights advocates all sharing your story. The narrative is shifting from crazy pregnant wife makes scene to successful woman betrayed by sociopathic husband. The transformation was remarkable. Within hours, public opinion had completely reversed. Amber was being dragged across every social media platform, with people digging up her past controversies and questionable business dealings. Derek's company website was being flooded with negative reviews, and several major investors had already pulled out of his current projects. But Sophia knew her sister well enough to recognize when she was holding something back. What aren't you telling me? Madison hesitated, which was unusual. Her sister never hesitated about anything. There's something else about Derek. Something that goes back to before you met him. What kind of something? He was married before, to a woman named Elena Vasquez. She died in what was ruled an accidental drowning at their house in Malibu 3 years ago. The blood drained from Sophia's face. He never told me he was married before. There's more. Elena had filed for divorce 2 weeks before she died. And she was pregnant. The room started spinning. Sophia gripped the hospital bed rails to steady herself. Are you saying Derek killed his first wife? I'm saying there are some very disturbing parallels between Elena's situation and yours. A pregnant wife discovering her husband's infidelity, a messy public confrontation, and then, Madison's voice trailed off. And then what? Elena's death was convenient for Derek. He inherited everything, including a $2 million life insurance policy. Her family tried to contest the ruling, but Derek had expensive lawyers and they didn't. Sophia's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. You think I'm in danger? I think Derek is a man who's used to getting what he wants. And right now what he wants is to start a new life with Amber. A pregnant wife who knows too much about his business dealings and who's now a public relations nightmare is definitely a problem he needs to solve. The realization hit Sophia like a physical blow. She wasn't just dealing with a cheating husband. She might be married to a murderer. We need to go to the police. With what evidence, suspicious circumstances surrounding a death that was already investigated? They'll think we're desperate and trying to smear Derek because of the affair. Madison was right, but that didn't make the situation any less terrifying. So what do? We be very, very careful, and we make sure that if something happens to you, Derek won't be able to cover it up. As if summoned by their conversation, Derek appeared in the doorway. He looked terrible, with dark circles under his eyes and stubble covering his usually clean-shaven face. Madison, he said with forced politeness, I didn't know you were in town. Somebody tried to hurt my sister. Of course I'm here. Derek's jaw tightened. Amber didn't mean to hurt Sophia. She was just emotional. Emotional enough to assault a pregnant woman in public. It was a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion by social media. Madison stood up, and even though Derek was taller, somehow she seemed to tower over him. Derek, let me be very clear about something. If you or your girlfriend come anywhere near my sister again, I will destroy you. Not your business. Not your reputation. You, personally? Derek tried to laugh, but it came out as more of a cough. Madison, I know you're upset, but threats aren't necessary. That wasn't a threat. That was a promise. After Derek left, Madison turned back to Sophia with renewed determination. We're going to need help. Professional help. What kind of help? The kind that specializes in making problems disappear. Victor Kane was not the kind of man you found through normal channels. A former LAPD detective turned private investigator. He specialized in cases that required what he diplomatically called creative solutions. Madison had used his services twice before, once to expose a competitor's industrial espionage, and once to locate a missing witness in a harassment case. They met him at a coffee shop in West Hollywood, far from the Malibu bubble where everyone knew everyone else's business. Victor was in his mid-40s, with graying hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen more than his share of human ugliness. Mrs. Reynolds, he said, shaking Sophia's hand with surprising gentleness. I'm sorry about what you're going through. Thank you. Madison says you might be able to help us. Victor glanced around the coffee shop, automatically cataloging exits and potential threats. I've been following your story in the news. Your husband and his girlfriend made quite an impression. It's not just about the affair, Madison said, sliding a thick folder across the table. We think Derek might have killed his first wife. Victor opened the folder and spent several minutes reviewing the documents Madison had compiled. His expression grew increasingly serious as he read. Elena Vasquez, he said finally. I remember that case. I wasn't involved directly, but the circumstances always bothered me. The investigating officers were convinced it was accidental, but there were some inconsistencies. What kind of inconsistencies? Sophia asked. Elena was an excellent swimmer. She grew up in San Diego and spent most of her childhood in the ocean. The idea that she would accidentally drown in her own pool during the day seemed unlikely. Victor explained that Elena's death had occurred on a Tuesday afternoon while Derek was supposedly at a business meeting. She'd been found floating face down in their infinity pool, with no signs of struggle or foul play. The coroner ruled it an accidental drowning, possibly caused by a seizure or other medical episode. But here's what bothered me, Victor continued. Elena had told her sister the week before that she was afraid of Derek. She said he'd been increasingly controlling and volatile since she filed for divorce. Did the police know that? Her sister tried to tell them, but Derek's lawyers painted her as a bitter in-law trying to cause trouble. Without physical evidence of foul play, there wasn't much the investigation could do. Sophia felt sick. The parallels between Elena's situation and her own were unmistakable. A pregnant wife, a cheating husband, a messy divorce, and fears for personal safety. Can you prove Derek killed her? After 3 years, probably not, but I can prove he's dangerous, and I can make sure he doesn't get the chance to hurt you. Victor's plan was multifaceted. First, he would investigate Derek's current financial situation and business practices, looking for evidence of fraud or illegal activity. Second, he would dig deeper into the circumstances surrounding Elena's death, interviewing people who hadn't been questioned during the original investigation. Third, and most importantly, he would make Derek aware that he was being watched. The key is making him paranoid, Victor explained. Men like Derek are control freaks. When they feel like they're losing control, they make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind that get them arrested? Madison hired Victor on the spot, writing him a check for $50,000 as a retainer. As they prepared to leave the coffee shop, Victor touched Sophia's arm gently. Mrs. Reynolds, I need you to understand something. If Derek is capable of what we think he's capable of, then you're in real danger. I'm going to assign a protection detail to watch your house, but you need to be smart. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't eat or drink anything Derek gives you. And if he suggests a romantic getaway or reconciliation trip, say no. You really think he would try to hurt me? I think he's a man who's killed before and gotten away with it. That makes him very dangerous. As they drove back toward Malibu, Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from Derek. We need to talk. I have a proposition that might solve all our problems. Madison read the message and immediately called Victor. He's making his move, she said when Victor answered. Whatever Derek is planning, it's happening soon. That evening, Derek came home with flowers, wine, and the kind of apologetic smile that had once made Sophia forgive anything. But now she saw it for what it was, manipulation. Baby, I know I've been terrible, he said, setting the flowers on the kitchen counter. But I want to make it up to you. To both of you. He gestured toward her stomach. Derek, I think we should separate while we figure things out. That's exactly what I want to talk to you about. I've been thinking, and I have an idea that might work for everyone. Derek explained his proposition with the smooth confidence of a practiced salesman. He would buy Sophia a house in Montecito, away from the media circus in Malibu. She could have the baby there in privacy, with the best medical care money could buy. He would provide full financial support and regular visitation rights. And what about Amber? Sophia asked. Amber and I are over? You were right. What happened between us was inappropriate and hurtful. I want to focus on my family now. It sounded reasonable, even generous. But Sophia had spent enough time with Madison to recognize a con when she heard one. That's very thoughtful, Derek. But I think I'd prefer to stay here for now. Derek's smile faltered for just a second. Sophia, be practical. The media attention here is toxic. Every time you leave the house, there are photographers. That can't be good for the baby. I can handle the photographers. But can you handle the death threats? Sophia's blood went cold. What death threats? Derek pulled out his phone and showed her a series of Instagram direct messages. Graphic, violent threats directed at Sophia from anonymous accounts. Threats to kill her, to hurt the baby, to make her pay for destroying an innocent woman's life. Amber's fans are crazy, Derek explained. Some of them blame you for what happened at the hotel. I'm worried about your safety. The threats were real and terrifying, but something about Derek's timing felt wrong. How convenient that he'd received these messages just as he was trying to convince her to leave town. We should call the police. I already did. They said there's not much they can do about anonymous online threats unless someone actually acts on them. Then I'll hire private security. With what money your influencer income barely covers your personal expenses. Derek was right, and they both knew it. Sophia's social media career, while successful, had never made her truly independent. She'd always relied on Derek's wealth for their lifestyle. The house in Montecito is perfect, Derek continued. Gated community, 24-hour security, completely private. You and the baby would be safe there. And isolated, Sophia thought. Cut off from Madison, from Jessica, from anyone who might help her if Derek decided to finish what he'd started with Elena. I need time to think about it. Derek's mask slipped again, just for a moment, and Sophia saw something cold and calculating in his eyes. Of course, take all the time you need, but don't take too long. These threats are getting worse every day. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Victor Kane called Madison at 7 a.m. with information that made Derek's generous offer look even more sinister. The house in Montecito, Victor said without preamble. It's the same house where Elena Vasquez died. Madison nearly dropped her coffee. Are you sure positive? Derek bought it 6 months after Elena's death, claiming he wanted to preserve her memory. But here's the interesting part. He's been renovating it for the past year. New pool, new security system, new everything. He's been planning this for months. It gets worse. I found the contractor who did the work. Derek specifically requested that the new pool be deeper than the original, with an updated filtration system that would be much more effective at disposing of evidence. Madison felt sick. Derek wasn't just trying to isolate Sophia. He was preparing to murder her in the exact same location where he'd killed his first wife. We need to warn Sophia. Already on my way to her house. But when Victor arrived at the Malibu mansion, Sophia was gone. The housekeeper, a nervous woman named Maria, explained that Derek had taken Sophia to breakfast at their favorite restaurant in Santa Monica. She seemed upset, Maria said in heavily accented English. She was on the phone with you, Senora Madison, and then Senor Derek came home early. He said they needed to talk privately. Madison tried calling Sophia's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried Derek's number with the same result. They could be anywhere, Victor said grimly. Derek knows we're on to him. He's accelerating his timeline. The restaurant in Santa Monica was crowded with the usual weekend brunch crowd, but there was no sign of Derek or Sophia. The hostess remembered them coming in around 9 a.m., but couldn't recall seeing them leave. They seemed to be having an intense conversation, she said. The lady looked upset. Madison's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. If you want to see your sister again, stop interfering. Some things are inevitable. He has her, Madison said, showing Victor the message. Not necessarily. Derek's smart, but he's also arrogant. He might be trying to scare us into backing off. Victor was already working his phone, calling contacts at the LAPD and the FBI. But as he explained to Madison, without evidence of an actual crime, there was little law enforcement could do. We need to find them ourselves. Madison's resources were considerable, but Derek had a head start and the advantage of knowing they were looking for him. For 3 hours, they checked hospitals, hotels, and every property Derek owned or had access to. Nothing. Then Jessica called with news that made Madison's blood run cold. I've been monitoring Sophia's social media accounts, Jessica said. Someone just posted to her Instagram story from her phone. It's a video message. Madison watched the video with growing horror. Sophia appeared to be sitting in a car, looking tired and stressed. She spoke directly to the camera, explaining that she was going away for a few days to clear her head and make some important decisions about her marriage. I know people are concerned about me, Sophia said in the video. But I'm fine. Derek and I are working things out privately, away from all the media attention. I'll be back soon, and hopefully, we'll have some good news to share. But Madison knew her sister well enough to spot the signs of distress. Sophia's hands were shaking slightly, and she kept glancing off camera as if someone was directing her words. She's reading from a script, Madison told Victor. Derek is making her say this, which means he's planning something that requires an alibi. He needs people to think Sophia left voluntarily. The video had been geotagged from a location near the Montecito house, confirming their worst fears. Derek was taking Sophia to the place where he'd killed Elena, and he was creating a digital trail that would support his story when Sophia inevitably disappeared. We need to get there now, Madison said. Wait. Victor grabbed her arm. We can't just charge in. Derek is expecting us to follow him. He wants us to find Sophia's body and call the police in a panic, which will support his narrative that she was unstable and suicidal. So what do? We set our own trap. Victor's plan was risky but brilliant. Instead of rushing to Montecito, they would make Derek think they'd given up. Madison would post on social media about how much she respected Sophia's need for privacy and space. Victor would publicly withdraw from the case, citing lack of evidence and family reconciliation. Derek needs to believe he's won, Victor explained. When he thinks he's safe, he'll make mistakes. The hardest part was waiting. For 6 agonizing hours, Madison sat in her hotel room and pretended to give up on her sister. She posted supportive messages about Sophia's decision to work on her marriage. She even gave a brief interview to Entertainment Tonight, claiming that the family drama had been blown out of proportion by social media. Meanwhile, Victor was quietly positioning his people around the Montecito property, not close enough to be detected, but near enough to intervene if necessary. At midnight, Derek's plan began to unfold. Security cameras that Victor had secretly installed around the property showed Derek's Tesla pulling into the driveway. He got out alone, spent 10 minutes inside the house, and then returned to the car. Where's Sophia? Madison asked, watching the feed on Victor's laptop. Probably in the trunk. The words hit Madison like a physical blow. While she'd been playing social media games and giving interviews, her sister might have been dying. We have to move now. Oh, not yet. He hasn't committed a crime we can prove. If we move too early, he'll claim Sophia left voluntarily and we're harassing him. On the security feed, they watched Derek carry something wrapped in plastic sheeting toward the pool area, something approximately the size and weight of a human body. Now, Madison asked desperately. Now? But as Victor reached for his phone to signal his team, the feed went black. Derek had found and disabled the cameras. They drove toward Montecito in complete silence, both afraid to voice what they were thinking. Madison stared out the window at the dark California landscape and wondered if she was about to become the sister who'd failed to save Sophia's life. When they reached the house, it was completely dark except for the underwater lights in the pool, which cast an eerie blue glow across the yard. Victor's team was already in position, surrounding the property with night vision equipment and tactical gear. Through their earpieces, Madison could hear the whispered communications of professionals preparing for the worst. Movement by the pool, someone reported. Single male figure. Visual on the target. Negative on the female. Repeat. Negative on the female. They were too late. Madison felt her world collapsing as Victor's team prepared to move in. Through her earpiece, she could hear them coordinating their approach to what they all believed would be a crime scene. But just as Victor was about to give the signal, a voice crackled through the radio that made Madison's heart stop. This is Mockingbird. I repeat, this is Mockingbird. Madison grabbed Victor's arm. That's Sophia? That's her voice. Mockingbird had been Sophia's childhood nickname, something only family members knew. If she was using it now, she was trying to communicate something important. Mockingbird, this is Base. What's your status? The eagle has landed, but the nest is still active. Repeat, the nest is still active. Victor looked confused, but Madison understood immediately. Sophia was alive, but Derek wasn't acting alone. There's someone else here, Madison whispered. Sophia's trying to warn us. Through the darkness, they saw movement near the pool house. Not Derek, who was still visible by the main pool, but a second figure dressed in black. Amber, Victor said grimly. She's here to help Derek clean up his mess. The realization changed everything. This wasn't just a jealous husband trying to eliminate an inconvenient wife. This was a coordinated plan between Derek and Amber to murder Sophia and make it look like suicide or an accident. All units, be advised we have two targets. Not one, Victor whispered into his radio. Female is armed and dangerous. Madison watched in horror as Amber emerged from the pool house carrying what looked like a bottle of pills and a large bottle of wine. The plan was becoming clear. They were going to drug Sophia and stage a suicide by drowning, just like Elena. But Sophia was still transmitting. The mockingbird knows where the worm is buried, came her voice through the radio. Under the old oak tree, third root from the north. What is she talking about? Victor asked. Madison's mind raced. Sophia was giving them information about something buried under a tree. Evidence, maybe, something Derek thought was safely hidden. She's telling us where Derek buried evidence from Elena's murder, Madison realized. She must have found something in the house. Victor immediately dispatched 2 team members to investigate the tree Sophia had described. If they could find physical evidence linking Derek to Elena's death, they could arrest him for murder, not just attempted murder. Meanwhile, the situation by the pool was escalating. Through night vision scopes, they could see Derek and Amber dragging something toward the water. Something that moved and struggled. She's alive, Victor said with relief. But not for long. We have to move now. 30 more seconds. My team needs to get into position. Those 30 seconds felt like hours. Madison watched as Derek and Amber positioned Sophia at the edge of the pool. Even in the darkness, she could see that her sister was conscious but barely moving, probably drugged. Units in position, came the voice through the radio. Go, go, go. What happened next was chaos orchestrated by professionals. Victor's team moved in from 4 directions simultaneously, using flashbang grenades to disorient Derek and Amber while avoiding injury to Sophia. Madison ran toward the pool as soon as she heard the explosions, arriving just in time to see Derek's face when he realized he'd been caught. You, he said, staring at Madison with pure hatred. You couldn't just let her go. Like you let Elena go. Derek's expression changed to something like respect. You figured it out. Most of it. Sophia figured out the rest. Amber was screaming obscenities as Victor's men restrained her, but Derek seemed almost relieved that it was over. She was going to destroy everything, Derek said, nodding toward Sophia, who was now sitting up with Madison's help. The business, my reputation, my future with Amber. I couldn't let that happen. So you decided to kill her. I decided to solve a problem, just like I solved the Elena problem. The confession was being recorded by multiple devices, but Derek seemed beyond caring about consequences. You want to know the funny part? Derek continued as Victor's men handcuffed him. Sophia's actually tougher than Elena. Elena went quietly, but your sister, he laughed bitterly. Your sister pretended to be drugged and then used her phone to call for help when she thought we weren't watching. Madison looked at Sophia with new admiration. Even drugged and terrified, her sister had been brave enough to coordinate her own rescue. How did you know we were listening? Sophia's voice was weak but clear. Jessica taught me about emergency broadcasting on social media. I figured if I used our childhood code words, you'd pick up the signal. The mockingbird thing. And the tree. I found Elena's jewelry buried there, along with some letters she wrote to her sister. Derek kept them as trophies. Victor's excavation team had indeed found a metal box buried under the oak tree, containing Elena's wedding ring, a bracelet with her DNA still on it, and handwritten letters describing Derek's threats and controlling behavior. That's enough evidence to convict him for Elena's murder, Victor said. Combined with tonight's confession and the attempted murder of Sophia, Derek Reynolds is never seeing the outside of a prison cell again. Synon. As the police took Derek and Amber away, Madison helped Sophia to the ambulance that Victor had called. The EMTs confirmed that Sophia had been drugged with a sedative, but both she and the baby were stable. Is it really over? Sophia asked as they drove toward the hospital. It's over. Derek and Amber are going to prison for a very long time. And the baby is going to grow up knowing that their mother is the bravest person I've ever met. Sophia smiled for the first time in days. I couldn't have done it without my sister. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. The trial of Derek Reynolds and Amber Sinclair became the most watched criminal proceeding in California since the J. Simpson case. The combination of wealth, murder, betrayal, and social media drama created a perfect storm of public fascination that dominated news cycles for months. Derek was charged with the first-degree murder of Elena Vasquez and the attempted murder of Sophia Reynolds. The evidence against him was overwhelming: Elena's jewelry and letters buried on his property, security footage from the Montecito house showing him and Amber drugging Sophia, and his own recorded confession. Amber faced charges of conspiracy to commit murder, assault on a pregnant woman, and accessory to murder. Her legal team tried to paint her as a victim of Derek's manipulation, but the prosecution had evidence showing she'd been actively involved in planning Sophia's death, including text messages discussing how to make the murder look like suicide. The trial revealed details about Derek's life that shocked even his closest business associates. He had been systematically controlling and abusing both Elena and Sophia, using financial manipulation, emotional gaslighting, and threats to keep them dependent on him. Derek Reynolds is not a man who made a mistake in a moment of passion, prosecutor Sarah Chen told the jury during closing arguments. He is a calculating predator who views women as disposable objects to be eliminated when they become inconvenient. The defense tried to argue that Derek's actions were the result of severe mental illness brought on by financial stress and drug use. But the prosecution countered with evidence showing that Derek had been planning Elena's murder for months before carrying it out, and had begun planning Sophia's death almost immediately after their marriage. This defendant didn't snap, Chen continued. He hunted. He stalked his own wives like prey, gained their trust, isolated them from support systems, and then murdered them when they threatened his carefully constructed facade. Sophia's testimony was the emotional centerpiece of the trial. Despite being 8 months pregnant by the time she took the stand, she spoke with clarity and strength about Derek's psychological abuse and the events leading up to the attempted murder. He made me doubt my own reality, Sophia told the packed courtroom. Every time I questioned his behavior or tried to assert my independence, he would twist it around and make me feel like I was being unreasonable or crazy. When Derek's attorney tried to suggest that Sophia had been an unreliable narrator due to pregnancy hormones and social media addiction, the courtroom erupted in anger. Several women in the gallery had to be escorted out after shouting at the defense table. Madison testified about her investigation into Derek's finances and the discovery of Elena's remains. Her testimony was clinical and devastating, methodically destroying any remaining credibility Derek might have had. My sister trusted this man with her life, Madison said, looking directly at Derek. He repaid that trust by trying to murder her and their unborn child. The most damaging testimony came from Victor Kane, who presented evidence that Derek had been researching methods of untraceable poisoning and had purchased drugs that could induce drowning reflexes. Phone records showed Derek had been in contact with black market pharmaceutical dealers in the weeks leading up to the attempted murder. Derek Reynolds didn't just plan to kill his wife, Victor testified. He planned to kill her in a way that would maximize her suffering and minimize his legal exposure. The trial lasted 6 weeks, but the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges. Derek Reynolds was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for Elena's murder, plus an additional 25 years for the attempted murder of Sophia. Amber Sinclair received a sentence of 30 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 20. Her OnlyFans account was permanently suspended, and several state attorneys general launched investigations into her role as a recruiter for wealthy investors. Today, justice was served not just for Sophia Reynolds and Elena Vasquez, but for every woman who has been controlled, manipulated, and abused by men who view them as property. Prosecutor Chen said outside the courthouse after the sentencing. Derek showed no emotion as the sentences were read, but Amber broke down completely, sobbing and screaming that she'd been brainwashed by Derek and didn't deserve to go to prison. The judge, a 60-year-old woman named Helen Martinez, had harsh words for both defendants. You have shown a complete disregard for human life and dignity, Judge Martinez said. Your actions have traumatized not just your immediate victims, but their families and everyone who has followed this case. You will spend the rest of your lives paying for your crimes, and that is exactly what you deserve. Outside the courthouse, Sophia faced a crowd of reporters and supporters. At 36 weeks pregnant, she glowed with health and confidence that was a stark contrast to the broken woman who had been slapped in a Beverly Hills hotel bar. I want to thank everyone who supported me through this nightmare, she said, reading from a prepared statement. But most importantly, I want other women who might be in similar situations to know that they are not alone. Abuse takes many forms, and it's never the victim's fault. Madison stood beside her sister, holding her hand as Sophia continued. Derek Reynolds stole years from my life and Elena's life, but he didn't succeed in stealing our futures. Elena's memory will live on through the foundation we're establishing in her name, and my child will grow up knowing that their mother fought back against evil and won. The Elena Vasquez Foundation for Domestic Abuse Prevention launched 6 months later with an initial endowment of $10 million, funded by the settlement Sophia received from Derek's estate and matching contributions from Madison's tech fortune. Sophia's daughter, Elena Rose Reynolds, was born on a sunny Tuesday morning in March, exactly 1 week after Derek's sentencing. At 7 pounds, 4 ounces, she was healthy, beautiful, and completely unaware that her father was a convicted murderer serving life in prison. Sophia had chosen the name Elena to honor Derek's first wife, whose memory had been crucial in securing justice. Rose was for Elena's middle name, creating a connection between the two women whose lives had been forever intertwined by Derek's crimes. She's perfect, Madison whispered, holding her niece for the first time in the hospital room at Cedars-Sinai. And she's never going to know what fear feels like, because we won't let her. The birth had been covered extensively by the media, but Sophia had learned to manage her relationship with public attention. She shared carefully curated moments with her followers while maintaining strict boundaries around her privacy and Elena Rose's safety. Her Instagram following had grown to over 2 million during the trial, transforming her from a lifestyle influencer into an advocate for women's rights and domestic abuse prevention. The Elena Vasquez Foundation had already helped over 500 women escape abusive relationships and had lobbied for stronger laws around financial abuse and digital stalking. You've built something incredible out of something terrible, Jessica said, visiting the hospital with flowers and a tablet full of media requests. Elena would be proud. Sophia looked down at her sleeping daughter and felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. Derek's conviction had given her closure, but Elena Rose's birth had given her purpose. I want to show her the world, Sophia said. All of it, the beautiful parts and the ugly parts and everything in between. I want her to be brave and strong and never let anyone make her feel small. Madison had taken a leave of absence from her tech company to help Sophia adjust to single motherhood. The sisters had grown closer through their shared trauma, developing a bond that was unbreakable. Have you thought about dating again? Madison asked gently. Sophia laughed. Elena Rose is 3 days old. Mad. I think I have plenty of time to figure out romance. I just want you to know that when you're ready, there are good men out there. Men who will love you and support you and never try to control you. I know, but right now, I have everything I need. The foundation work had introduced Sophia to other survivors of domestic abuse, women who had escaped situations similar to hers. Many of them had become close friends, creating a support network that was both personal and professional. Dr. Sarah Chen, the therapist who had helped Sophia during the trial, had joined the foundation's board of directors. She emphasized the importance of long-term healing for abuse survivors. Trauma doesn't disappear just because your abuser goes to prison, Dr. Chen explained during one of their sessions. Recovery is a process, and it's different for everyone. Sophia had been in therapy consistently for 8 months, working through the psychological damage Derek had inflicted. She'd learned to recognize the warning signs of controlling behavior and to trust her own instincts again. The hardest part, Sophia told Dr. Chen, is forgiving myself for not seeing the signs earlier. Derek was skilled at manipulation. That's not your fault. I know that intellectually, but emotionally, I still blame myself sometimes. That's normal. The important thing is that you survived, and you're using your experience to help other women survive too. 6 months after Elena Rose's birth, Sophia decided to write a book about her experience. The Perfect Facade, How I Survived My Husband's Attempt to Murder Me, became a bestseller within weeks of publication, with all proceeds going to the Elena Vasquez Foundation. The book tour took Sophia across the country, speaking to sold-out audiences about domestic abuse, financial control, and the importance of trusting your instincts. At every event, women approached her with their own stories of abuse and survival. "Your courage gave me the strength to leave," one woman told her after a speaking event in Chicago. "I watched your trial and realized that my husband was using the same tactics Derek used on you." Stories like that made all the pain worthwhile. Sophia had transformed her trauma into a force for good, helping thousands of women recognize and escape abusive relationships. Elena Rose was now walking and talking, showing signs of the intelligence and determination that ran in the family. She was too young to understand her complicated family history, but she was growing up surrounded by love and strength. "Mama," Elena Rose said one morning, pointing at a photo of the original Elena on Sophia's desk. "Pretty lady." "Yes, baby. That's Elena. She was very brave, just like you're going to be." Madison had returned to running her tech company but remained deeply involved in the foundation's work. She'd used her resources and connections to expand their reach internationally, helping women in countries where domestic abuse laws were even weaker than in the United States. "We're making a real difference," Madison told Sophia during one of their weekly dinners. "The ripple effects of what you went through are helping women all over the world." "Good. That's all I ever wanted." As Elena Rose's second birthday approached, Sophia reflected on how much her life had changed. 2 years ago, she'd been a trophy wife living a beautiful lie. Now she was a single mother, successful author, and advocate for women's rights, living an authentic life built on truth and purpose. The scars from Derek's abuse would always be with her, but they no longer defined her. She had taken back control of her narrative, transforming herself from victim to survivor to warrior. 3 years after Derek Reynolds was sentenced to life in prison, Sophia stood before a crowd of 5,000 people at the annual Elena Vasquez Foundation Gala. Elena Rose, now a precocious 3-year-old, sat in the front row with Madison, occasionally waving at her mother on stage. "When I first shared my story," Sophia said into the microphone, "I thought I was just trying to survive another day. I had no idea that speaking my truth would create a movement that would help over 10,000 women escape dangerous situations." The foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a way to honor Elena's memory had become a comprehensive organization providing legal aid, financial assistance, temporary housing, and emotional support to domestic abuse survivors across the globe. "But tonight isn't about celebrating how far we've come," Sophia continued. "It's about acknowledging how far we still have to go." She introduced Dr. Sarah Chen, who presented research showing that financial abuse affected 89% of domestic violence survivors, and that women who tried to leave abusive relationships were most at risk of being murdered in the weeks immediately following their departure. "The Elena Vasquez Foundation isn't just changing individual lives," Dr. Chen explained. "We're changing systems, laws, and cultural attitudes that have historically failed abuse survivors." The foundation had successfully lobbied for legislation in 12 states requiring financial institutions to recognize and report signs of financial abuse. They'd also created a smartphone app that helped women secretly document evidence of abuse and connect with local resources. Madison took the stage to announce the foundation's newest initiative, a partnership with major tech companies to develop artificial intelligence tools that could identify potential domestic abusers through their digital behavior patterns. "We can't prevent every tragedy," Madison said, "but we can use technology to identify red flags and intervene before abuse escalates to murder." The crowd erupted in applause. But Sophia knew the real victory wasn't in the technology or the legislation. It was in the faces of the women who approached her after every speaking engagement. Women who had found the courage to leave dangerous relationships because of Elena's story. After the gala, Sophia tucked Elena Rose into bed in their new house in Beverly Hills. It was smaller than the Malibu mansion she'd shared with Derek, but it was filled with love, laughter, and the kind of security that came from authenticity rather than wealth. "Mama, tell me about Brave Elena," Elena Rose said, using her favorite bedtime request. "Brave Elena was a woman who tried to protect herself and her baby from a bad man," Sophia began, using the age-appropriate version of the story she'd developed. "She wasn't able to stay safe, but she left clues that helped other women stay safe. Like breadcrumbs. Exactly like breadcrumbs. And because of Brave Elena's breadcrumbs, many other women and children are safe now. Will I be brave like Elena?" "You're already brave like Elena, sweetheart. You're brave like her, and like Aunt Madison, and like Mama." After Elena Rose fell asleep, Sophia sat in her home office answering emails from women around the world who had read her book or heard her speak. Each message represented a life potentially saved, a cycle of abuse potentially broken. One email particularly moved her. It was from a woman in Australia whose husband had tried to poison her after she discovered his affair. The woman had recognized the warning signs from Sophia's book and had secretly recorded evidence before going to the police. "Your story saved my life," the woman wrote. "My husband is now in prison, and my children and I are safe. Thank you for having the courage to speak your truth." Sophia replied to the email, as she did to all of them, offering encouragement and resources. It was time-consuming work, but it felt like the most important thing she'd ever done. Her phone buzzed with a text from Victor Kane, who had become a close friend and occasional security consultant for the foundation. "Saw the news about Derek's appeal being denied. Thought you should know." Derek had spent 3 years filing appeals and trying to overturn his conviction, claiming everything from ineffective counsel to prosecutorial misconduct. Every appeal had been rejected, but Sophia knew he would never stop trying. "Good," she texted back. "How's Amber doing? Still in prison? Still claiming she was brainwashed? Earliest possible parole is in 17 years. Sophia felt no satisfaction in Amber's imprisonment, but she felt relief knowing that another potential predator was off the streets. As she prepared for bed, Sophia reflected on the conversation she'd had with Elena Rose. Her daughter would grow up knowing that her father was a murderer, but she would also grow up knowing that her mother had fought back and won. More importantly, Elena Rose would grow up in a world that was slightly safer because of the work the foundation was doing. She would have access to resources and support systems that hadn't existed when her mother was trapped in an abusive marriage. Sophia's phone displayed dozens of notifications from social media, news outlets, and supporters commenting on the gala. Her story continued to resonate with people around the world, inspiring not just abuse survivors but anyone who had ever felt powerless in the face of injustice. But the most important message was a simple text from Madison. "Proud of you, sis. Elena would be proud too." Sophia smiled and turned off her phone. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new stories of abuse to address, and new women to help. But tonight, she was simply a mother whose daughter was safe, whose sister loved her, and whose purpose in life was clear. The girl who had once been slapped by her husband's mistress in a Beverly Hills hotel bar had become a woman who slapped back at injustice itself, using her voice and her platform to protect other women from the same fate. Elena Vasquez's death had not been in vain. Derek Reynolds' evil had not triumphed. And Elena Rose Reynolds would grow up knowing that sometimes, when the world tries to break you, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to stay broken. Sophia turned off the lights and headed to bed, ready to dream of the thousands of women who were sleeping safely tonight because she had found the courage to fight back. The perfect facade was gone, but something infinitely more valuable had taken its place, an authentic life built on truth, strength, and the unshakable belief that every woman deserves to be safe, respected, and free. The end. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic abuse, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or visit thehotline.org. Help is available 24/7, and you are not alone.